Hey everyone, ever wonder how a place famous for Hollywood glamour, tech giants, and golden beaches actually came to be? I mean, it just appeared on the map, right? Or did it? What if I told you the birth of California, the Golden State, wasn't just some administrative formality, but a wild, dramatic tale of forgotten empires, epic land grabs, and even a grizzly bear flag that was, well, kind of a last minute decision? Stick around because by the end of this video, you'll never look at California the same way again. We're talking gold, glory, and a whole lot of gritty history that's way stranger than fiction.
So, imagine this. It's the early 1800s. California isn't a state. It's not even really California as we know it. It's a vast, untamed frontier. But here's the twist. It's already been discovered centuries before, right? Think again. The Spanish Empire had claimed it, sure, but their grip was tenuous, to say the least. It was more of a suggestion than a full-blown occupation. And here's where it gets wild. You've got this immense, resource-rich land, largely undeveloped, just sitting there, practically begging for someone to take charge. But who? And how? Spoiler alert, it involves a lot of intrigue and some seriously bold moves. You see, most people think of America's expansion as a neat westward march. But California's story, it's a chaotic free-for-all, a scramble for power where the players weren't always who you'd expect. And trust me, the consequences echo even today. So, what was this land like before anyone really owned it? Picture a land of incredible natural beauty, fertile valleys, towering redwoods, and a coastline kissed by the Pacific. It was a paradise, largely inhabited by diverse indigenous peoples living lives that had gone on for millennia. But then came the Europeans, right? First the Spanish in the 16th century. Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo sails up the coast in 1542. He claims it for Spain. Big moment, right? Except they didn't really do much with it for over 200 years. Talk about a slow burn. Why the delay? Well, Spain was busy with other, more lucrative parts of its empire. Mexico, Peru. Those were the real moneymakers. California was just too far, too wild, too expensive to colonize properly. It was like buying a huge mansion and just letting it sit empty for centuries. But that's exactly what happened. Fast forward to the late 1700s. Suddenly, Spain gets nervous. Why? Because other European powers, specifically Russia and Great Britain, are starting to poke around the Pacific Northwest. Uh-oh, Spain thinks, maybe we should do something with California after all. And so, they finally begin to establish missions and presidios, military forts, along the coast. Think of Father Junipero Serra and the California missions. You've probably heard of them, right? They were designed to Christianize the native populations and solidify Spanish control. A monumental undertaking, but was it too little too late? These missions, while often romanticized, were also places of immense cultural upheaval and hardship for the indigenous people. It's a complex legacy, woven into the very fabric of California's past. But their existence did, however, lay some groundwork for future claims. Now, here's a crucial piece of the puzzle. Mexico's War of Independence. Spain's grip on its colonies weakens, and in 1821, Mexico gains independence. Suddenly, California, still sparsely populated by non-natives, becomes part of Mexico. Big change, right? But did much really change on the ground? Not as much as you'd think. Mexico inherited this vast, distant territory, and like Spain, struggled to exert strong control. Land grants were issued, massive ranchos emerged, and a unique Californio culture began to flourish, a mix of Spanish, Mexican, and indigenous influences. But here's the kicker. While Mexico was trying to figure things out, another power was growing, getting restless, and looking westward with hungry eyes. Any guesses? Yup, the United States of America, and they had a doctrine called manifest destiny. Sounds ominous, doesn't it? Manifest destiny was this fervent belief that America was divinely ordained to expand across the entire North American continent. And guess what was directly in their path? Mexican California. It was like a giant neon sign blinking, "Take me," to expansionist Americans. Now, before we dive into the explosive clash that shaped California forever, I want to take a quick moment. If you're finding this deep dive into California's true origins fascinating and you love uncovering the real stories behind the headlines, do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button. This channel is all about exploring untold histories and making complex topics ridiculously easy to understand. Your support helps us keep these stories coming. Okay, back to the Wild West, or rather, the Wild Southwest. American settlers, trappers, and adventurers started trickling into California. Small numbers at first, but with big ambitions. They saw the fertile land, the mild climate, and the strategic ports, and they started to whisper about independence. But independence from who? From Mexico, of course. These American settlers, often with a sense of entitlement and a dash of genuine frontier grit, weren't keen on being under Mexican rule. They saw themselves as pioneers, bringing civilization to what they perceived as an underdeveloped land. Pretty audacious, huh? And this is where a guy named John C. Fremont enters the scene. He's an American explorer, cartographer, and a bit of a maverick. He led several expeditions into California, ostensibly for scientific purposes, but he was also heavily armed, and let's just say his scientific curiosity leaned heavily towards military reconnaissance. Fremont was basically a human curiosity gap. Everywhere he went, things got interesting. He was acting under vague orders, but his presence certainly stoked the fires of rebellion among American settlers. And then, something happens that just blows everything wide open. The Bear Flag Revolt. In June 1846, a group of American settlers, encouraged by Fremont's presence and their own desire for independence, decided they'd had enough. They marched into Sonoma, captured the Mexican general Mariano Guadalupe Vallejo, and declared California an independent republic. They even created a flag, a grizzly bear, a star, and the words California Republic. Sounds super official, right? Here's the kicker. The bear on the first flag looked more like a pig. Seriously, it was painted in a hurry, by candlelight. Talk about DIY nation building. This republic lasted a grand total of 25 days. Why so short-lived? Because almost immediately after the Bear Flaggers declared their independence, a much bigger conflict erupted, the Mexican-American War. That's right, the US and Mexico were officially at war. The Bear Flag Revolt, while short, was incredibly significant. It gave the Americans in California a sense of agency and a rallying cry. It also gave the U.S. a convenient local movement to support as they advanced their military objectives. Talk about timing. The U.S. Navy, under Commodore John D. Sloat, landed in Monterey just weeks after the Bear Flag Revolt, raising the American flag. This was the official claim, the military muscle behind the Manifest Destiny dream. And this is where California's fate was truly sealed. The war in California wasn't a huge, bloody affair like battles in Mexico, but it involved several skirmishes. The Californios, under figures like Andres Pico, put up some resistance, but they were ultimately outmatched by the growing American forces. And here's where the plot thickens even more. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, signed in February 1848, officially ended the Mexican-American War. Mexico ceded a massive chunk of its territory, including what would become California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and parts of Colorado, Wyoming, Kansas, and Oklahoma to the United States. The U.S. paid Mexico $15 million for this immense land. It was essentially a fire sale. Imagine acquiring almost half a continent for what, even then, was a relatively modest sum. A truly mind-boggling deal. But wait, there's more to this timing. Just days before the treaty was signed, something else happened that would utterly transform California, making its acquisition by the U.S. an even bigger prize than anyone could have imagined. What could possibly top a massive land acquisition? Gold. James W. Marshall discovered gold at Sutter's Mill on January 24, 1848. The news spread like wildfire, and suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of California. The California Gold Rush was born, and it was pure pandemonium. Think about it. The U.S. just bought California, and then bam, gold is discovered. Talk about hitting the jackpot. This wasn't just a discovery. It was a catalyst that changed everything overnight. It pulled people from all corners of the globe. This influx of 49ers was unprecedented. San Francisco, a sleepy little town, exploded into a bustling, lawless, incredibly diverse city almost overnight. The population surged from around 15,000 non-natives in 1848 to over 100,000 by 1850. Can you even imagine that kind of growth? But this rapid growth came with huge challenges. There was no established government capable of handling such a massive, chaotic influx. Law and order were, shall we say, suggestions rather than strict rules. And guess what happens when you have a ton of people, a lot of gold, and no real laws? Trouble. The existing military government couldn't cope. There was a desperate need for a stable, civilian government. And this pressure cooker situation forced the hand of the U.S. Congress. California needed to become a state, and fast. Here's another fascinating detail. California became a state very quickly, skipping the traditional territorial phase. It went from a Mexican territory to an independent republic, briefly, to an American possession, and then straight to statehood in just a few short years. What was the rush? Slavery. Yep, that dreaded word. The issue of whether new states would be free or slave states was tearing the U.S. apart. California's application for statehood came at a critical time, threatening to upset the delicate balance in Congress. California ultimately entered as a free state in 1850, as part of the Compromise of 1850. This compromise was a series of legislative packages designed to temporarily diffuse the escalating tensions over slavery. California's size and location made it a huge pawn in this national chess game. So the journey from an uncolonized frontier to a bustling state was incredibly rapid and complex. It wasn't a neat, planned expansion, but a wild ride, fueled by imperial ambitions, settler movements, a war, and an astonishing discovery of gold. And what's the big takeaway from all this? California's origin story is a powerful reminder that history is rarely simple. It's a tapestry woven with threads of grand strategy, personal ambition, cultural clashes, and incredible strokes of luck. Or misfortune, depending on whose perspective you take. This chaotic birth forged a state unlike any other. It created a unique blend of cultures and a spirit of innovation and opportunity that continues to define California today. From Hollywood's dream factories to Silicon Valley's tech breakthroughs, that frontier spirit, that anything is possible attitude, it's all rooted in this dramatic past. So, next time you see the California flag with its grizzly bear, remember that it represents a story far more intricate and fascinating than just a simple symbol. It's a testament to the wild, unpredictable forces that shaped one of the most influential places on Earth. And that, my friends, is the true epic origin story of the state of California. A story of daring explorers, determined settlers, shifting empires, and a whole lot of gold. What did you find most surprising about California's birth? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and definitely subscribe for more deep dives into fascinating historical and scientific topics. We've got so many more stories to uncover together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.